Let's talk about David Grusch, because you see, he has come into the spotlight again because of this UAP hearing that we just had. And of course, I made a video on him that is being seen by quite a few people, right? What happened to David Grusch and his investigation? Where are we with all that, right? Well, something else caught my eye recently, and I think it's kind of a big deal. Because I just saw an interview with Ralph Blumenthal, and he admitted to something that I'm not sure is actually out there. Now, there may be rumors or this floating around, and David Grusch has said some things himself, but what you're about to hear might be breaking news.
But someone in the hearing said that said government agencies have been unable to substantiate any of David Grusch's claims in or out of SCIFs. What do you do with that information? What do you make of that? Where does that leave us in regards to Grusch's claims? I'm not for a moment suggesting, oh, okay, it's all off, forget it. He lied about everything. That's clearly not where we are. But yeah, what do you do with that, and what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that came out of the hearing this week was that the government has played a very disingenuous role over the years. They've lied about things. We know that. And there's a long history of misinformation and disinformation and, outright lying. So, when the government or the Pentagon spokesperson says that there's no information to substantiate Grusch's claims, first of all, very few people are read into these programs. Grusch was one of the few who was. The author of this report, that was Immaculate Constellation, that was cited at the hearing, did have access, obviously, to very high-level confidential classified information. So the people who are denying this officially either don't know, they don't have the security clearance, or it's part of the long program of denying what is becoming increasingly clear is reliable information.
Did you catch that? Did Ralph Blumenthal just say that David Grusch was read into a UFO program? Because that's not exactly the information that is out there. And I'll explain in this video as we go along with some supporting clips here, but let's hear that again.
Very few people are read into these programs. Grusch was one of the few who was.
Yeah, that's what he just said. Now, Ralph Blumenthal isn't just anybody. He is one of the journalists that broke the groundbreaking 2017 New York Times article, right, that just put the UFO community on the scene, or the topic in general, right, worldwide, right? And then he also broke the David Grusch story, right as the News Nation interview came out with Ross Coulthart, right? Some say before, technically it was before, right? And then Grusch testifies, right? And it's this whole whirlwind, right? And they had tried to take that story to the New York Times. They didn't publish it about David Grusch, but Ralph Blumenthal isn't just anybody, right? He knows David Grusch. And so I don't know if this is, just a slip of the tongue here, right? Am I overthinking this? Am I thinking too much about this? Is this a potential reason that David Grusch is kind of mum right now? I don't know, right? But let's look at some past comments David Grusch has made that might give us a clue, right? Because David Grusch has talked about having firsthand knowledge, but what does that mean, right? That has nothing to do with being read into a UFO program. Now, stay with me, because I do have more information that may give us an indication of that. But first, here's a clip of David Grusch talking on News Nation, kind of admitting this firsthand knowledge.
I couldn't be very upfront about my firsthand knowledge until recently. I got some other security approvals through the pre-publication and security review process. And I did have some firsthand knowledge of some specific parts of the program. I'm currently drafting an op-ed that I'm going to release in a few weeks, and I will be discussing what I actually do know firsthand. I just could not overtly discuss that at the time, including at the hearing, because the Pentagon and the IC were sitting on some of my pre-publication and review paperwork at the time, so I could not acknowledge that.
When you say you have firsthand knowledge, you actually saw something yourself?
Well, the deeper description of what I know has been redacted. They proposed a redaction in a pre-publication and security review response a few days ago, and they're telling me to withhold legally some of the firsthand knowledge I have, but I'm allowed to generally discuss that I was read into a UAP-related program directly by the U.S. government.
So he's kind of dancing around it a little bit, right? But he's only admitting to firsthand knowledge and that this op-ed would come out, which never came out and is still yet to come out. And I'll be honest, at this point, probably never going to come out, right? But he's just talking about firsthand knowledge, right? Nothing to do with being read into a UFO program, right? Now, let's look at what David Grusch said when he first testified, right, before Congress. Because here he's saying something a little different.
In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it.
Now, I played the full clip there to kind of give you an idea exactly of what his investigation was, right? And at the very end there, he says that he was denied access to these programs, right? So how could he be read into them, right? That's not adding up. Now, granted, David Grusch is absolutely trying to toe the line from what he can say, can't say, approved by DOPSR, not revealing anything classified, national security, sources and methods, yada, yada, all these things, right? There's a lot going on. He's got his lawyer sit behind him, making sure he doesn't cross a line. Now he's doing interviews, got to do the same thing. So I get it, right? It becomes very confusing what you can say, what you can't say. But he testified to being denied access to these programs, right? But then later on in the hearing, he's asked by Burleson a pretty fascinating question. Again, this is at the July 2023 hearing, and listen to his answer here.
You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
So that's interesting there, right? Because at first he's saying, well, I can tell you behind closed doors. And they're like, well, have you seen the bodies? No. So I guess no bodies even behind closed doors, he would admit to. But something with the UFOs, right? It's almost like there's more to it right here, right? Was Ralph Blumenthal just misspeaking when he said that David Grusch was read into a program? But David Grusch is just saying he has some sort of firsthand knowledge, whatever that may mean. He's seen some videos, photos, like what does that even mean exactly? But these answers are interesting. It's kind of all over the place. And does it really even make a difference whether or not he was read into a program or not? I would argue, yes, absolutely. That is huge because on one end, you're saying you're being denied access to these programs. But on the other end, you're saying, according to Ralph Blumenthal, you have been read into them, right? Or at least one of them. Are there different programs? There's legacy UAP programs and then just secret UAP programs to study the legacy stuff. I don't know, like what's going on. How many programs are there? David Grusch just read into one, but denied access to others, denied access and then allowed to join another. That seems odd too, right? Like it doesn't add up all the way. And, maybe David Grusch could solve all of this, just explaining some of this, right? It would be great to have David Grusch come back out and do another interview and maybe follow up with all of us and some clarification on a few of these things, right? But clearly he has to be careful what he says for whatever reason, right? But I find it interesting, all these different answers. Now, something that's, I saved it for the end, because something that's sort of unofficial, if you will, someone went on Reddit and last year, right, and posted that they had gone to this secret event, right, in New York City with Wall Street bigwigs, right, where David Grusch gave this private presentation, right, and revealed things he hadn't revealed publicly. And supposedly within this presentation, he admitted to being in a UFO program, right? And there's pictures to prove it, right? That he went to this thing. And the guy, posted about it, right? And talked about it and gave some details. And here's kind of a summary of what he said. Grusch said he was part of an extremely secret program that would figure out how to track and find UAPs in our atmosphere and near Earth orbit. He said his op-ed will include much more details regarding this. He was told about a UAP that was in our possession that had a diameter of around 40 feet, but once you went inside, it was the size of a football field. They believed that the object was somehow able to manipulate both space and time. He had recently been informed that a U.S. adversary was considering full disclosure to get out ahead of the U.S., and that he passed this information along to the U.S. government. He also mentioned that the U.S. has taken part in a fair amount of crash retrievals before 1933. The NHI look like typical gray, and they aren't sure where these beings have come from. There is also a chance that they are extra-dimensional, but that it could also just seem this way because of the technology they use, rather than them being actual extra-dimensional beings. Interestingly, he also mentioned how many people know the full scope of the phenomena to be no more than 50 people. And that person later deleted their account. Now, there was no video or audio of David Grusch saying any of this, so it's basically based off a person who deleted their account thereafter, right? But did post photos of this event to prove this, gathering happened, right? But why is David Grusch giving presentations like this? And why can't that information be released publicly, right? Clearly he's cleared to talk about it if he can say it here, right? Why can't he just tell us he was read into a UFO program? And did that guy mishear it, right? It's hard to tell. But Ralph Blumenthal later saying this, I think it's a slip-up in this interview, right? That David Grusch was read into a program. That's a big deal. It's a very big deal, right? Because David Grusch later in his opening statement, right, to Congress last year in this hearing, states that the reason he came forward is basically because he's being denied access. But sounds like he had access as well.
I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
So, maybe the situation is that David Grusch denied access to some, but then they came back and asked him to come into another one. I don't know. The data he collected is interesting, right? I don't know. I'm just so confused by this, and I would be curious to read everyone's comments here of what they think. Did they interpret what Ralph Blumenthal said like I'm saying, right? Because, again, that's not really being admitted. Again, this Reddit thing and this private meeting, again, we're not really sure what was said there, but there's Ralph Blumenthal who reported on David Grusch, the 2017 New York Times article, clearly someone with knowledge saying that Grusch was read into a program. What program? Was it Immaculate Constellation? All right, y'all. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. I had to push back the one I was going to make about the UFO video that I showed yesterday. So that is coming. I just need more time to dig into who originally uploaded that video. But rest assured, I am going to be looking into that. So I'm going to follow up. Don't worry. Just need more time. So anyway, we'll see you guys on tomorrow's video, which I believe is the hearing. Make sure to come back for that. I will be covering the Senate hearing tomorrow. All right. That's going to be happening. Gillibrand, Arrow, lot to cover there. All right, y'all. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day is a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.